over to your side. It's gonna be all right. Come on over to your side. It's gonna be all right. All right. Hallelujah. I'm feeling good down in my soul on today. We welcome everyone to this Bible class and this Bible study, and all of those who are joining us. We appreciate those who have come into the house that are here, all of our brothers and our sisters, those who are born of water and spirit, that's in the body of Christ, in the body of Mashiach. We welcome each and every one of you, and those who are joining in online. I'm going to try to keep up if there's any questions or anything. Those who are joining us online and the couple of platforms that we are on, we certainly welcome you on tonight, and we appreciate him for his loving kindness, his tender mercies, his the joyfulness that he gives us in his spirit, in his ruach. We appreciate that, and we appreciate all of those who are certainly staying with him and moving in the wisdom and the knowledge that he has given unto us. I am no ways tired. I'm awful thankful for his patience and what he's given unto us in this day and this time. We are in a time where there's going to be a proving of the people who are actually his people and those who are walking in the light that he has given unto us. That light that he's given unto us has never gone out. It has always been there, and so it's nothing that we should look at as being something. What's new about this? This is awful strange. This is awful new. No, actually, this is what he's given unto us from the very beginning. He had told us and given us instruction from the very beginning, and it's up to us if we want to follow and walk in that light, or if we want to, to stay on a path that when knowledge is increasing, revelation is coming, understanding is given, if we're going to reject it or if we're going to walk in that light. That's everybody's. Each and everybody has to make that decision on what they're going to do, and I'm thankful on tonight for just spending time with him in prayer, in reading of the Word, in meditation of the Word, in study of the Word, and how he just ministers, his spirit, his ruach, just ministers unto me. And it is my prayer that this Word and this spirit, this ruach, ministers unto you as well, because it takes his word and his spirit together. They are witnesses. You got to have 2 or 3 witnesses. He says, upon 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. And so I just want to look at that real quick first in excuse me, 2 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse number 1. And we have the apostle Paul, the apostle. We know him as Apostle Paul. In the first century, he was known as the apostle Shaul. And he says here, this is the 3rd time I am coming to you. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established. So there has to be 2 to 3 witnesses in order for the word to be established. In order for anything to be established, it takes 2 or 3 witnesses. And so his word bears witness to his spirit. But just like it says 2 or 3, the word bears spirit. The word bears witness to the spirit, and the spirit bears witness to his son. And so where you got 2 or 3 witnesses, let everything be established. Let it all be established. And so as we move through the teaching of the word, it should be important to us to grow. I can't if I'm still in the same mindset as I and the understanding that I had back in the 70s and the 80s. If I'm still moving in that same light, then we're kind of behind, because it says knowledge is going to increase. That was kind of the prophecy that Daniel gave us, that is evident in the last days. As it shows in the last days, it talks about how knowledge is going to increase. We see how knowledge is increasing technically. You see all the technology that we have, how we're more advanced now. What was it, just 100 years ago, they were barely, the industry of aviation was in its early stages about 100 years ago. And you see where we are today, and you see how aviation has really taken off. If people were in the mindset that I don't want to grow, I don't want to know anything new, I don't want to have any more knowledge, I think I have enough knowledge, you would still be riding horseback. You still be, a lot of us would go home, we'll have horses, you have to feed your horse and make sure you had a trough, and you'd get on your horse. And there's some cities we go into and you see law enforcement, they're on horses. You go to some country, some parts of the country, out in the country, and you'll see people, they have horses and they still ride their horses. I've been on highways, secondary highways, I'm sure you have as well, where you go to certain parts of the country and you'll see people riding horses. They're just riding horseback. They're going down the road and on their property and whatnot. But if I still had that mindset that I don't want to know anything, a horse is good enough. I got 10 horses. That's 10 horsepower. Well, we're beyond 10 horsepower now. We got vehicles, it's 100 some horsepower, 200, 300 horsepower. Just imagine if you had 200 or 300 horses and how much power you would have and how fast you'd be able to go. But we're not, we have to move beyond some of the basic things and some of the things that we understand. And so in Hebrews chapter number 6, and looking at verse number 1, and he says in Hebrews 6:1, therefore, leaving the principles of the doctrine of Christ, or the Mashiach, let us go on unto perfection, not laying again the foundation of repentance from dead works and of faith toward Elohim, and of the doctrine, verse number 2, of the doctrine of baptism, and of laying on of hands, and of resurrection of the dead, and of eternal judgment. And this will we do if Yah permit. Now, if we want to move on to perfection, there's some things and some groundwork that we can't continue to lay down, according to what's written here in the book of Hebrews. Now, what was given the Hebrews, and what was given unto our Messiah, and what was given unto those who were in his day, and you might hear me say in reference a few times, first century Israelites, and those who were in the first century Israelites. We're talking about our Messiah. That's the first one that should come to mind. When you talk about first century Israelites, the first one that comes to mind should be your Messiah. Should be our Messiah. That's the first one. And then you have all of his disciples that followed him. You have Zacharias, that was in the first century. You have Elizabeth. You have Miriam. You have the mother of our Mashiach. You have all his disciples. You've got James, who we say James, but his name is Jacob. You say John, his name is Yahuchanan. You got Peter, which is Peter's name is Cephas or Petra. In Greek, they call him Petra. Petros in Greek, and Petros, you know what Petro means in Greek? It means rock. So, and that's what they called him, was the rock. Peter was the rock, or Petros, but his Hebrew name was not Petros. It was more of Cephas or Kepha. The C is, you say it kind of soft, or you can say with a hard K. And we're learning some of the Hebrew letters. We're trying to learn some of those letters to where we can actually speak that kind of like. Now, somebody might say, I don't really need to speak that. I don't really need to speak that language and in order for my salvation. And that's true. You don't really need to speak that for salvation. But it does give you a broader understanding. It gives you kind of open up and broaden your understanding, and gives you a deeper understanding of things that are being spoken and said. There is a time coming, we're moving towards that day. There's a time coming where he's going to have a pure language. He's going to have one language. Everybody's going to know his name. Everybody's going to know his name. Everybody's going to be able to speak his name. And I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that day where we're going to know even as we're known. I'm looking forward to that day to where there's going to be one pure language. I don't believe it's debatable if you want to debate with me, but I don't believe it's going to be English. But you can debate that if you like. But I don't think it's going to be English, and mainly because of the languages that he had given his people. And I think if we want to grow and to learn more about him, there's so much that we can learn in this book. There's a wealth of knowledge and information that is in this book. And do we want that, or do we want to stay in the same mode as we have been? I mean, one thing that I said when I was elevated to pastoralship here, one thing that I said, and some of you might remember, but I said, I don't want to rest on our laurels. I don't want to rest on our laurels. If there's something else for us, and if we want to move and grow, that's what I want. I want to grow. I'm not of the mindset that I don't want to learn anything, and I'm definitely not of the mindset that I know all of it. No man knows all of it. He gives out, pieces here, pieces there, in each walk of life and generation. He's sharing with men and women as we grow. And so what's beautiful for us is that we can build on what has already been given us. I know what's been given us. And what's been given us now can I grow on that? Or is that all to know? What has been given to us, is there anything else to learn? Is there anything else for us to know? Well, absolutely. Absolutely, there's more for us to know if it's in your wheelhouse to want to know more. Now, you have some who might feel, well, I think I know enough, and that's it. I'm not ready to grow anymore. And then you'll have some that will say, well, by all means, share more, tell more, show me more, teach more, and so that we can grow. I want to impress upon all of those who have a relationship with him, and this is important. You got to have a relationship with him, and you cannot have a relationship with him if you're in sin. You will not be able to have the beauty of this word and the beautification of his spirit, the richness of his presence, and the glory of his guidance. If you're in transgression, I mean, if you're in transgression and if you're in sin, we know what that does, right? I mean, it says in Isaiah 59, he says, it's your what? It's your iniquities that has severed you from me. What keeps us from that sacred walk and that sacred relationship with him is if we have sin. If we have sin and transgression, then that's going to impede our growth, and it's going to eliminate our relationship with him. Now, I did say something I want to clear up. I want to clear up because I said something on the Shabbat. I think it was the last Shabbat or last Bible class. I'm trying to remember. I think it was last Shabbat, and was the last Bible class. And I said, Stephen in the 7th chapter of Acts, in the 7th chapter of Acts, when they was getting ready to stone Stephen, and he looked up into heaven, and he seen the Mashiach, our Messiah, and he was sitting on the throne up in heaven, and that's what I had said, and I went on to say that once he stands up, that means that he's about to come. He's going to return. He's going to return to gather us unto himself. And so I went back and I looked at that in the 7th chapter of Acts, and today, I don't know if anybody realized it, at least around here in this area, it was a pretty overcast, cloudy day, a lot of rain was coming down, at least on my house. I don't know about your house, but I mean, there was periods of a downpour, there was thunder, there was lightning, and it was very overcast, really cloudy today, just a lot of rain today. But I was sitting up by the window in my kitchen, and I was studying and reading, and it came back to me, what I had said. And so I went back to the 7th chapter of Acts to read that again. And as I was reading it, and I mean, there was some lightning, and you can say what you want to say, it just happened to be at that time, but as I was reading I was reading in Acts, and it said he was, and you can go back and look at the 7th chapter of Acts, right before he was stoned to death, and he looked up into heaven, and he seen the Messiah, our Mashiach, standing on the right hand of the throne. He was standing. At the time that Stephen looked at him, he was standing. And so I said, oh, okay, well, I misspoke. I misspoke, and so I'll have to kind of clear that up. And so, there was some lightning, boom, some lightning. So, I said, okay, I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry. I'll have to go back and correct. I'm not afraid to correct myself if I'm not right. I don't want to have a spirit of pride or arrogance. I don't want to have that spirit that to where I think I'm infallible, that I can't make a mistake, I can't speak wrong, I can't do anything wrong. Please, I'm I'm not that person. So and just the way the lightning was striking, and so I went to I had to go back into the Hebrew and into the Hebrew scripts. And so when I was going back to the Hebrew scripts, and I went to King Solomon, and when he was building the temple and everything, but it as I was reading, and I was reading through all those passages and everything, when the king or the melech, when he went into the throne room, now you know what I mean when I say the throne room. The throne room is where you would see his throne, and you know how King Solomon's throne was, very elaborate, very very glorious. 6 steps all the way up, and it was kind of like an oval shape, and his throne was sitting at the top, and on each step, you know what you had? You had lions. I mean, not no fake lions. These was real lions. These was real lions on each step as you go up on either side. So you had 12 lions that when you approached his throne, you did it in a spirit of reverence. I mean, it was like, I hope those lions are trained, and tamed, because I don't want to approach the throne and be eaten by a lion. Anyway, reading through some of Solomon, and it was. Do you know what when the king went into the throne, in the throne room, or he went up to his throne? What would he do when he got to his throne, and what signified him entering into, how do I want to say this? So he would go into the throne room, and what would he do? When he ascended to his throne, what would he do? Before he could do anything else, what would he do? Huh? He kneel down. He would what? He would sit down on the throne. So what does that mean? What did it mean when he sat down on the throne? Once he sat down on the throne, what did he do? Huh? Not resting, but when the king sat on his throne, what was he getting ready to do? He was getting ready to judge. He was getting ready to judge. So when the king sat on the throne, now he's ready to judge. And so in the 7th chapter of Acts, when Stephen was at his point of death and he looked up there and he's seen the Messiah standing on the right hand of the throne, because he was still at work, and our Messiah is still at work now. When he sits on the throne, that means judgment. That means now he's getting ready to enter into judgment. And that's why even Shaul said, we all must appear before what? The judgment seat of the Mashiach. Didn't we read that? Let's go there. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 10, he says, for we all must appear before the what? Judgment seat of Christ, or the Mashiach. So as long as he's standing by the right hand of the throne of Elohim, he hasn't entered into his judgment. Once he sits down, and that's why Stephen, when he looked up into heaven, he's seen him standing. He hadn't started judging. He's not judging until he sits down. And then you get to Revelation, and then there's some more things that come out in Revelation, and when we're dealing about his throne and being around his throne. But he does not begin to judge until he sits down. So once he sits down, you better be ready. You better have your house in order, because if you appear before his throne and he's sitting on that throne, it's time to judge. It's either time to judge. We all got to judge. We're going to be judged, and we're going to have to be judged before we reign, because it is in Revelation those that's going to reign with him, but you're not going to reign until you appear before his judgment seat. And so you have that process of appearing before the judgment seat if you're going to reign with him. So there's so much in the word that is for us, if that's what we want. If you want to know more, if you want to grow, there's a lot in the word in the word for us. So in our foundational scripture, one of our foundational scriptures is John 4:22. John 4:22. And our Messiah says, ye worship, ye know not what. We know what we worship. For salvation is of the Jews, or salvation, what he said here is salvation is of, the Yahudim, or salvation is of Judah. What he's saying here is salvation is of Judah. And so when he was, and we know he was talking to the Samaritan woman, there's some things that we have to understand about the Samaritan woman and the Samaritans, the reason why they didn't want to have any dealings with them. They didn't want to have no dealings with the Samaritans, and some of that had to do culturally, and some of it had to do with their descendancy. And so you have a mixed bag here. And our Messiah knew that. Our Messiah knew that in being the Son of the Most High and what was given unto him, everything that was spoken of concerning him and not only just was concerning him, but everything, the oracles and everything that was given unto Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, um, everything in the in the kingly lineage, all the prophecy through the prophets concerning him, he was very much aware of, very much aware of. But that's not all that he knew, because if you read the 8th chapter of Proverbs, which is the wisdom chapter, he was the very wisdom of Elohim. He was the very wisdom of Elohim. So, and if you read the 8th chapter of Proverbs, the wisdom of Elohim was there at the time of the creation. He was, it was there at the time of creation. All of the knowledge, the wisdom, just the craftsmanship of our Most High Elohim that created the heavens and the earth, and some of the references that he gives to the heavens, and how he can reference some things that might be somewhat distant to us in our framework of our our knowledge and where we're at, but he was there to witness everything, because he was the wisdom. So everything that was written aforetime, that was written about him, he was very much aware of. And so by making a statement like this, especially when he says salvation, first, even before he gets to salvation, when he's dealing with their worship, the Samaritans was considered, was almost considered like Gentiles. They were considered Gentiles. They, you have really gotten off into idolatry. Idolatry is what took Israel, or was really the main reason why he divorced Israel. Now, he put up with Israel with a lot of their behavioral issues. A lot of their behavioral issues, he put up with it. He put up with King David, who was an imperfect man, but he put up with them. He put up with King Solomon for a certain time period. He put up with King Hezekiah. I mean, you look at all the prophets, and you look at all of the people in the book of Judges, and he had a lot of tolerance for a lot of their imperfections. But one thing that he would not tolerate, and this is true even today, one thing that he would not tolerate, and that is idolatry. He does not tolerate idolatry. That was something that was just, okay, I can put up with you, you're lying, you're a bunch of liars. I can put up with that. In fact, you go ahead and get some sacrifices and some, and give me a sin offering. I can put up with that. I can put up with you stealing. I can put up with you killing. I can put up with your adultery. Even though those who committed adultery, there was no sin sacrifice for adultery, because he said adultery, if you're caught in adultery, what? Death. Death. There was no offering for that sin. But even though we see many of them did commit adultery, even, the most famous one was King Daud, but he says, I already forgiven you. I put that away from you, but there was judgment placed on his house, and judgment on that child. But he seemed to put up with a lot of imperfections of Israel and a lot of their misbehaviors. But one thing that he would not put up with, idolatry. I'm not putting up with idolatry. I cannot, you cannot walk before me with any other gods, any other Els, any other Elohims. And I want to show you, as we, especially in our Sabbath class and everything, how in the Hebrew, you don't see it so much in the English, but in the Hebrew, there are a lot of Elohims. They pronounce it Elohim. I think most of you kind of used to Elohim. It's actually it's Elohim, because You have the Aleph character first, which is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it's not L. It's not E. It's not a short E or a long E, the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And most of us know what that is, right? It's the Aleph character, and it's pronounced Ah. And so when you look at the word, now we say gods, God with a little g, God with a big G. And that's how we decipher and separate. But in the language, it's Elohim. So you had different Elohims. You had different Elohims. You had Elohim that was over a lot of different nations. In fact, all the Elohims of heaven, you know what he called them? He called them his children. He called them, they were Elohims or gods, but he called them his children. You're all my children. You mean he had other Elohims or Elohims, if you're more comfortable with that? You mean there's other Elohims and Elohims? Oh yeah. He had other Elohims, and all of them were considered his children. He says, you are all children of mine. Now, it just so happened that we ourselves, we are not Elohims or Elohims. What are we? We are Adam. We are of the seed of Adam. We are earthlings. We are creatures that were created. But he had Elohims that he created before he even made the heavens and the earth. Because you go back to Job, let's go there in Job. Job, what is it, chapter 38, and I think it's verse number 7. Let's look at that real quick. Job 38, 37. And he says, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. What is he talking about here? Well, you go up to, you go up to verse number 30 or verse number 4. He says, where was thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. So here he is. He is creating the heavens of the earth. And when he created it, in verse number 7, he says, the morning stars sang together. All the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. Those sons of Elohim at the time of his creation, they were called Elohims. They were called what we would say today, little g's. These are little g's. These are little gods. And all of them were his sons. All of them were his creation. Another reference to that, if we go to, and this is one of the chapters that we're supposed to read, but in Psalms chapter 82, and we're not going to read the whole Psalms, but let's look at verse 1 in Psalms 82, and then we'll go down to verse number 6. And it said, now this is in the King James. I usually use the English Standard Version or the Septuagint because it reads slightly different. But we'll just stay with the King James tonight. But Psalms 82 and 1, he says, Elohim standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the, now if you look at it in English, it's gods with a little g, right? But if you go to the Hebrew text, it says, Elohim standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the Elohims. That's what it says in the Hebrew text. So you have Elohim that sits in the council of the mighty. He judgeth among the Elohims. Now look at verse number 6. Let's drop down to verse number 6 in chapter 82 of Psalms. Verse number 6, he says, I have said, ye are Elohims. Now listen to what he says. And all of you are what? All of those Elohims are children of the Most High. So he created gods, or he created Elohims. There are other Elohims. He created them. He even says here, all of you are my children. So we we have the human mindset, and because we're taught a certain way, we're taught that there's only one Elohim. No, there's one Most High. And that's why he is referred to as the Most High Elohim. Because when you say the Most High Elohim, now you're setting him above all those other ones that are his sons. You're set above all of the other Elohims. Now, what did he do with those Elohims? Does anybody know what he did with those Elohims? When he created those Elohims, but do you know what he did with those Elohims? He gave them authority, because if you read in this same chapter, in verse number 2, he says, how long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? So these Elohims had responsibility and duties. In fact, he put them in the seat of judgment. He put them in the seat of judgment. And so they were put over, I don't want to get there tonight, but just to let you in it, because you'll hear me say it more. But they were put over the nations. They were put over nations. And where do we see they were put over nations? Well, you have to go back to the table of nations. And where's the table of nations? In Genesis, the 10th chapter of Genesis, you have the table of nations. And if you count all of those nations that were set up from those sons, you count Shem, Ham, and Japheth and all of his sons, just one day in your spare time, count them all up and let me know what you come up with. But he actually had set Elohims up over these nations. But who did he choose as his? He chose Jacob. He chose Jacob, and we see that in Deuteronomy chapter 32. He says, when I set out all the boundaries and I gave you Elohims, all your responsibility, he says, I chose Jacob for mine. Jacob is mine. That's my allotment. That's my inheritance. So him choosing Jacob is like an election. When you choose, I elected you as my people. It ain't nothing that you've done. And he even said that I didn't choose you because you were some great and what? Mighty nation. I didn't choose you because of that. Because when he chose Abraham didn't even have no sons. He had a servant in the house who was Eliezer, but he didn't even have a son. But he promised him a son, and we see that he took Isaac and then Jacob, and then he made Jacob into a nation of Israel. But he said, this is my inheritance. And he entered into covenant with them. And so he told them, and when he entered covenant with him, with the whole nation of Israel, the first thing he said when he gave them the 10 Commandments is that you're not supposed to have any other Elohims. If you look at that in Exodus chapter 20, and then in Deuteronomy chapter 6, I think it is, he says, thou shalt not have any other Elohims before me. That was the first of the 10 Commandments. But you know what was the first and great commandment? Because we talked about that, the Holy Shema, because they asked our Messiah, what is the first and great commandment? And what did he say? What did he quote unto them? Which is the Holy Shema, Deuteronomy 6 and 4. He quoted it verbatim, didn't he? He said, this is the first and great. He says, hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah thy Elohim is one Yahuwah. And that first commandment was, thou shalt not have any other Elohims before me. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Right. In English, it's lowercase g, but if you go back to the Hebrew, just look it up in your Hebrew, and it'll tell you what it is. It's Elohim. Look at that verse, and look at the verses where you see a big G, uppercase G. In the Hebrew language, you don't have the capitals. You don't have capital letters. We have capital A's, low A. We have capital B, low B. We have pronunciation or punctuation. You don't have that in the Hebrew. That in the Hebrew, it's just a continual writing. All the letters are the same. And so when you read that, it says, thou shalt not have any other Elohims or Elohims. You're not supposed to have any other Elohim. And the reason why he said that is because I chose you. You're my people. You don't belong to any of these other, Dagon, Chemosh, Baal. What are some of the other ones? Ashtaroth. You know, you even got Ashtaroth today. You got Astarte. You've got even got the, you know, people who worship the winter solstice. I mean, you got a lot of people who worship the stars, and that's where they get their gods and stuff like that. He says, there's no way my people are to have any other gods or Elohims. Let's go to Exodus chapter 23 and verse number 13. Yes. Right. Right. And when you have L-O-R-D in all caps, that is his name. That's the tetragrammaton, or the tetragrammaton. Tetragrammaton is Greek, and what it means is four, tetra, four. Grammaton is the letters or vowels, 4 letters. That's what it means. Tetragrammaton means 4 letters. Well, what were the 4 letters? Yod, He, Ud, He. That was his name. So when you see all uppercase L-O-R-D, what it is Yod, He, Ud, He. That's the 4 letters. Tetragrammaton is 4 letters. Well, when you pronounce those 4 letters together, Yod, He, Ud, He is pronounced Yahuwah. So and there's many verses in the Torah that references his name. And he even says, this is my name. A number of times in the prophet Isaiah, he said, this is my name. You know, so when you say L-O-R-D, you're not speaking his name. Even when the King James Version, when it came out, and some of the, I mean, you got, what is the publisher, K. Biderbeck, or some of those other publishers, and they'll tell you that they put an agent of capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D as a replacement agent for his name, so that people would say L-O-R-D and not his name. And so why would they do that? Why not just give us his name in the scripture? Which he did. When you go into the Hebrew text, his name is right there. You don't see it once you see the translation from the Hebrew to the Greek. You don't see it. And then you don't see it when it goes from Greek to Latin. And then, of course, from Latin to English, you don't see it. But in the Hebrew, you see it. It's there. It's very plain. And that's what his name is. So did that answer your question? Questions? Okay. So in verse 13 here of Exodus 23 and 13, he says, in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect, and make no mention of the name of other gods or Elohims. If you take that back to the Hebrew, it's Elohims. Neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. So why was he so explicit with that? Why do you, and then there's other verses we can pull up where he says, I'm a jealous. In fact, one time he said, my name is jealous. That's my name, jealous. Oh, I didn't know you was jealous. Yeah, I'm jealous. And the reason why he's jealous is because he chose you. He said, Israel is my portion. Israel is my lot. That's my inheritance. Out of all this earth, I have a council of other Elohims, and they're over their people, but I've chosen Israel. Israel's mine. This is mine. So that's why he was so forceful and unforgiving for idolatry. I mean, you can go to the Most High. You're going to resort to a lower council? And you got the Most High? You're going to resort to a lower council and worship them when you got the Most High? I mean, that's an insult to him. He's like, you're worshiping, you worship you know not what. I created all of them. It says in Psalms 82, all of y'all my children. All of y'all my children. But you're going to resort to a lower being when you got the Most High? And we have, you know, we use the terminology, we use the vernacular, the Most High. And some people feel, man, why do you say the Most High? Why do you say that? Because when you refer to him as the Most High, you're putting him above all Elohims, all gods. I'm calling him the Most High above all. And then I even know his name. So when he says, when we get to the third commandment, and he says, I don't want you to take my name in vain, what he's saying there is, I don't want you to make my name useless. It's totally useless. You've cast my name off into the abyss. You made my name useless. That's a commandment. We ain't supposed to do that. Oh no, he's the Most High Yah. What does it say in Psalms 68 and 4? What does that say? Because some of us know. He says, sing unto Elohim, sing praises to his name, extol him that rideth upon the Shamaims by his name, Yah, and rejoice before him. Yes. No, I mean, it is a contraction. It is kind of a shorter version. And I think because in his infinite wisdom and the knowledge that he has, and how you have the ancient Hebrew, then you have the Paleo Hebrew, then you have modern Hebrew, then you have, you got the Syriac, you've got Samaritan, you got the Targums, you got the Aramaic, you got the Greek, you got the Latin, you got the English. But if you look at all of them, everybody can say Yah. I mean, everybody can pretty much say Yah. Now, some people, they pronounce the second half of it a little different, depending on what language that you're using and what period of time. Because you have the ancient Hebrew, then you have the Paleo, then you have the modern, and then you have the Aramaic, and then you have the Greek, and you have the Latin, and you have the English. But in all of those languages, everybody can say Yah, because everybody in heaven, now we don't know how large his host in heaven is, but everybody in heaven calls him Yah. And we say, Yod He Ud He, which is the tetragrammaton, the Yod character, the He character, the Ud character, and the He character, and it's Yahuwah. And so that's how we pronounce it. And that's his name. In fact, if you look at, let's go to Joel, the prophet Joel, and let's look at verse number, Joel, chapter 2, verse number 32. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of Yahuwah, now it says the, Lord, and only in English do you have the the or thee is a definite article. And only in English do you see that definite article. You don't see it in Hebrew, and you don't see it in Greek. In the Hebrew, they don't say the Lord. They don't say the Yah, the Yahuwah. It's like my wife doesn't call me the Richard. I don't think Sister Parker calls you the Cedric. Or Sister Gerard calls you the Terry. You know, that you don't say the, or you don't use a definite article in front of a personal pronoun or name. You don't do that in the Hebrew or in the Greek, and you really don't do it in English. But what they use is they used this Lord as an agent just to keep you from the name. So they say the Lord. Now you could call him the Yah if you want to, but you don't have to put a definite article in there because there's only one Yah. There's only one Yahuwah. So he says here, it shall come to pass, whosoever shall call on the name of Yahuwah shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yah have said. And in the remnant whom Yah shall call. So there's coming a day where you're going to have to know his name. And I think that's why in this day and hour we're in now, he's starting to open it up and reveal it. He always sends out warnings before he sends out judgment. He always gives warnings before judgment. And don't be offended. None of us should be offended if somebody calls on Yah or Yahuwah. The word calls on him. Does the word offend you? I mean, is the word offensive to you? Is it offensive to anybody? It might be to some. It might be to some. But when you really look at it, this Bible should not be offensive to us. His word should not be offensive. This is what he said. I mean, and I'm glad you brought that up, the uppercase Lord, because if you look it up in the Hebrew, it's the tetragrammaton, or the 4 letters. And he says there's a day coming where you're going to have to call on that. You're going to have to call on that name, because that's the name that he gave Israel. He gave Israel that name. He told Moses, he said, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew me as the Elohim, the Most High Elohim, but they didn't know me by my name, Yahuwah. Didn't he tell Moshe that? I think that's in Exodus. Somebody might be able to find it. I think it's the 6th chapter of Exodus, or the 6th chapter of Exodus, I think it is, where he says, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob didn't know me by my name, Yahuwah. I think it's in the 6th chapter of Exodus. So there is coming a day where you're going to have to know his name. You're going to have to call on his name, and because he is the one that's going to answer and to hear. Okay, Exodus 6:3. Thank you. Exodus 6 and verse number 3. And I appeared unto Abraham, and Yishak, and Jacob by Elohim Almighty, or El Shaddai. In the Hebrew, he appeared unto them, or under Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as El Shaddai. El Shaddai is how he appeared unto them. But by my name, Yahuwah, was I not known to them. So he had, and then when you look up El Shaddai and what that means, but he had given them, and Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew him as El Shaddai. But unto Moshe now, and coming out of Egypt, now he's telling, now why do you think he's giving them his name? Because they're a nation now. They went in as a family, they come out of a nation. But he's saying, now I want you to know my name. I want you to know my name. But by my name, Yahuwah, was I not known to them. But he had established this covenant and with Israel. So it was highly offensive to our Father in heaven for us to bow down to any other idols, to get caught up into idolatry. That was such an insult to him. He could not forgive Yasharal for that. All of these other Els, all these other Elohims, all these other gods, and I created all of them. They're all my children, but I selected you, and I'm the Most High, and you're going to resort to a lower council, and I'm the Most High? I could have chosen, do you know he could have chosen any other nation? If you look at Genesis chapter 10 and you see all these different sons and how they went out in the areas they're supposed to go, he could have chose any of those other ones. But he says, no, I'm going to choose Israel or Yasharal. They're going to be my portion. They're going to be my children. Now, I want to get this, I just want you to understand and kind of get a somewhat of an understanding. I'm going to try to hopefully paint a picture or get you to see what it was like to be a son of Elohim, or like those other Elohims. And he says, all of you are my children. They were there when he created the heavens of the earth. When he created the heavens, it says the morning stars. Remember we went to Job, the morning stars and the sons of Elohim, they rejoiced. Who were those sons of Elohim? Well, those were the sons that he had created as gods, and they sat in his council. It says that in Psalms chapter 82 and then Deuteronomy chapter 32, they sat in a council. Do you guys remember in 2 Kings where it was King Jehoshaphat and you had King Ahab? Anybody remember that? King Ahab went to King Jehoshaphat and says, come with me, let's go to war against, was it the Assyrians? I have to look at it again, but they went to go to war, and King Ahab, he was the king over who? Anybody know? King Ahab? He was king over the northern kingdom. He was the king over the northern kingdom, or Israel. King Ahab. King Jehoshaphat, then, he was king over southern, which was Judah. So you had the king over Judah, then you had the king over Israel. And so the Most High, and maybe somebody can get that in I think it's the second chapter or 2 Kings, I think it is chapter 13 or somewhere around there. Or is it 1 Kings 13? Is that where it's at? I'm going to find this real quick. Where okay, I think it's 2 Corinthians, right? Or I'm sorry, 1 King 22nd chapter, right? I think that's where it's at. It came time for Ahab to die. Came time for Ahab to die, and he was going to go to war. Is that the one where it says I'll be a lion? Yeah. 1 King chapter 22. Let's start with verse number 19. 1 Kings chapter 22, verse number 19. And he said, hear thou therefore the word of Yah. I saw Yah sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. So here he is, you got the Most High Yah, and he's sitting in his council. Huh? Yeah. He's in his he's got his council, he's sitting there, here comes some judgment. And Yah said, now listen now, he's talking to his council, his the host of heaven, and we read in Psalms 82, when he sits in his council, he's talking about the other Elohims. He's created them. He says, all of you are my sons. All of you are sons. All of you are my children of the Most High. So here we have him sitting in the council, and he says, and Yah said, who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this manner, and another said on that manner. So here he is, and he asked them, who's going to persuade Ahab? He's talking to his council. One said one. Now we don't know what one said and what the other one said, but one said on this manner, and another said on that manner. So he's holding court, and he's asking them. And then came forth a spirit and stood before Yah and said, I will persuade him. So what does Yah say? And Yah said unto him, what did Yah say? Wherewith? Or how are you going to persuade him? Can you see that? Can anybody see that? No, wait, but can you see him sitting in the council with all these other spirits, all the other hosts, all these other, and he's asking them questions. He's asking them questions. He's carrying on a conversation. One of them says, well, I'm going to do it this way. Another says, well, I'm going to do it that way. Another one says, hey, I know what I'll do. I'll persuade him. And he says, how? How are you going to persuade him? He says, I'll be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. Now notice what the Most High Yah says. What does he say? Thou shalt persuade. And what? Prevail also. Go forth and do so. So he sends them out of the host of heaven. I want to kind of create that counsel that he has and all that he's created. He has not just created Adam. He has a counsel. Well, who needs to counsel him? You have to understand he's the Most High. Out of all of them, out of all his creation, he's the Most High. And for any of us to approach him not in that light or understanding is actually an insult to him. I'm the Most High. I'm the creator of all. I created all of this. All of y'all the works of my hands. And it's important to see this council that he sits in. The duty and responsibility. Okay, so he says, I'll be a lying spirit. And he says, okay, go ahead, persuade him, you will prevail. Go forth and do so. And so he was a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. Now, let's go back to the book of Psalms, chapter 82. And let's look at verse number 6. I have said, ye are gods or Elohims, and all of you are children of the Most High. All of these other Elohims, all of those who sat on the council. Now, this whole chapter of 82 here, he had given those Elohim responsibilities and duties. Okay, let's go up to verse 1. Elohim standeth in the council of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods, or the Elohims. Listen to what he says. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Talking to the other Elohims. What were they supposed to do? Defend the poor and the fatherless. To do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are what? Somebody's not doing their duty and responsibility. The reason why the world is in the condition that it's in now, somebody's not doing their duty or responsibility. It's important to see this, especially when he says, all of you are children of the Most High. Let's go to Job real quick. Let's go back to Job chapter 38 and verse number 7. When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. And this was at the creation. He had already had a council. He had already had gods and sons. He had already had them before he created the heaven and the earth, before he even created Adam. That's why King Daud says, what is man that thou art mindful of him, or the son of man that thou rememberest him? You have made him what? A little lower than the angels. We're not on that level. We were created beings on this earth through Adam and the seed of Adam. That's what we are. We are earthlings. That's what we are. We're right here on this earth. That's how he made us. But he has a plan for us. He has a plan for us. Let's go to John chapter 1, verse number 11 and 12. John 1, verse 11 and 12. And what does it say? He came unto his own, and his own received him not. Verse number 12. But as many as received him, to them what? Gave them power to what? The sons of Elohim. Just like those other ones who were his sons. He says, all of y'all my children of the Most High. Didn't we read that? Do you know what the next verse says in Psalms 82, verse 7? After we read, he says, all of y'all are children of the Most High. All y'all gods, all of you. Do you know what verse 7 says? Anybody know what verse 7 says in Psalms 82? But you're going to die like men. And then what is he doing with men? Not all man, but what is he doing with men? No, he said they're going to die like men, but we're in John now, John 1 and 12. And then verse 12. So those other gods that are his sons, they're going to die like men. But now you got men that has received him. He's given them power to become sons of God and actually to reign with him and actually be at a higher estate than the other ones. That's why Paul said, you guys are just trivializing. You guys are trivializing. And we do. We're so small-minded. We dribble over a lot of little things. We're so small-minded. He says, why do you go at war with one another, with your brethren? Remember what he said in Corinthians? He said, why do you go with war at one another? Don't you know you're going to what? Judge what? Yes. He says, you guys are, you're wasting your time. You guys are doing all this little trivial stuff. Don't you know you're going to judge angels? Those that he gave power to become the sons of Elohim or the sons of God, those are the ones he's going to raise up, even over the ones who have fallen, and they're going to die like men. He even says you're going to die like men. Now, we can't think in those terms. I know some of us, it's like, man, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I can't get it. You're talking, and I'm not picking it up. But we'll look at it and we'll visit it more because I went further than what I wanted to say, because our foundational scripture is John 4:22, and we should already know he's jealous and he don't tolerate you worshiping other gods, other els. That's why he was telling this woman, you worship you know not what. Us, and he was talking about Judah, he's saying we know what we worship. Now there's a difference between what he said as far as Judah and knowing who they worship. I'm just going to say this and then I'll have to prove it in scripture. How about that? Okay? And then I'll try to prove it in scripture, but I'll just say it like this. In Genesis chapter 10, when he put out the nations and stuff, and he actually set up Els or Elohims over these nations. He did. He set them up over these nations, but he chose Israel as his own. All of the Samaritans who say they were Samaritans were not blood descendants of the 12 tribes or the 10 northern tribes. And you see that in 2 Kings chapter 17:24. We're not going to go there tonight. But they all were not descendants of the 10 tribes, the northern tribes. They were Gentiles. And being Gentiles, they had their, guess what? They had their Elohims. They did. They had their Elohims. So that's why he was saying, you guys, you don't even know what you worship. You worship you know not what. You don't even know what you're doing. Now we should know what we're doing. He says, we know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews or the Yahudim or of Judah. So how do we get to that point where salvation is of the Yahudim or of Judah or of Jews? We have to settle this whole verse here. When our Messiah said things like in the 4th chapter here, like he said in the 10th chapter and in the 7th chapter and the great day of the feast and the 10th chapter, the feast of dedication, when he said, our Messiah knew everything that was written before. Everything that was written before. When the devil, or Satan, when he tempted him, and he took him up, remember he took him up into the mountain, right? And what did he show him up in the mountain? All the nations. Showed him all the nations. And he says, if you bow to me, I'll give you all these nations. Because all those nations had other gods over them. He says, if you bow down to me, I'll give you all of them. And what did he say? It is written, thou should not worship any other. I mean, thou shalt worship Yahuwah thy Elohim, and him only shalt thou serve. He went back to the Holy Shema and the first commandment. It's written. That's what's written. I'm not going to bow down to no other gods. We know what we worship. We know that Yahuwah Elohim is our Elohim. He chose us. We know that. You can't get me to bow down to any of these other. When you got people worshiping all these other gods, is there other gods out there? All kind of gods. There is other gods out there. And they have their holidays. Other gods, and they have their holidays. But we know what we worship. We know what we worship. We know, one thing that got Israel cut off was idolatry. There's no way I'm going to bow down. The more he opens up my understanding, there's no way I'm going to bow down or give any kind of shine or any kind of wording. Or it says in Exodus 23:13, he says, I don't even want it to come out of your mouth. It shouldn't even come out of your mouth. We know what we worship. I know what I worship. Maybe you don't. I know what I worship. I know who I worship. And then we'll look at the salvation and how the salvation is of the Yahudim or Judah. Now, where do you think I'm going to go as one of the scriptures to get that 2 and 3 chords? If a chord has 2 or 3, I think that's how Solomon explains it in Ecclesiastes. A 3-folded chord is what? It's strong, it's hard to break, So there are other scriptures that we can use to tie around this. But I'm going to give you one. What do you think one of them is? Just anybody. Just by looking at this, when he says salvation is of the Jews or salvation is of Judah. Huh? Romans? No. Whenever our Messiah spoke, he always referred back to what? Torah. He referred back to Torah. He never looked. Paul wrote letters to those who were in ecclesia or called out. He wrote letters to them. But our Messiah, when he spoke, everything he spoke, since he was Torah, everything that he spoke, he referred to Torah or the prophets. So just off anybody out there in the chat, where do you think, what is one verse or one discourse or one, actually it's more than one verse, but where we can get another out of Torah that supports what our Messiah said here. He says, for salvation is of the Jews or the Yahudim. Anybody got any ideas? Anybody out there in the chat? Anybody in the chat room? The mountain? Yeah, that's one. You got, I think you're talking about Isaiah 2 and 3. That is one. And what's the other verse with Isaiah 2 and 3? Micah 4 and 2. So Isaiah 2 and 3, Micah 4 and 2, yes. But let's go back further than that. Let's go back because Isaiah and Micah, they were writing their prophecy during the Assyrian captivity or the Syrian. This is where they had become a nation. They fell into idolatry. You had the Assyrians that they went into tributaries to and captivity to the Assyrians. And that's when you have Isaiah and Micah in that time period. But let's go back a little further than that. I'll give it to you because we're out of time. Anybody out there in the chat knows? What in John 4:22, when he said salvation is of the Jews or salvation is of the Yahudim or salvation is of Judah, what scripture or what do you think he was referring to, or what did he know to where he was bringing it back? I mean, he was verifying it. He was verifying it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Genesis 49 and verse number 10. We'll just go there real quick because we'll be calling this one back. But we'll end with this one tonight because salvation is of Judah or the Yahudim. But Genesis 49 and 10. And it says, the scepter shall not depart where? From Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. Now, the last part of this, listen to the last part of it. And unto him, unto who? Judah. Huh? Unto him or unto Judah shall the gathering of the people be. So when he's saying salvation is of Judah, salvation is of us, because it was prophesied. It was prophesied that the scepter would not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. This whole prophecy from 49, 10, 11, and 12, this is referring to, well, we won't get into it tonight, but we're going to look up some words, and we'll look up what Shiloh is. Just look up what Shiloh is and what Shiloh means. Kind of look up and see what that means. And you might have to go because it's used several times in Torah. And we have to look at it in its context, in the context of Genesis 49 and 10, and then we'll look at it in the context of the other, in the prophets when it's written. But we'll look at it in that context. Okay. Any questions, comments? It's getting late. Any questions, comments out there? No questions, comments? Oh, okay. Yeah, we do have an announcement. And that is what is that again? This is something that's coming up. I think and this is kind of for the brothers, right? It's This is men's health, and it's concerning men's health, and they're just having is it a seminar or whatever it is? A virtual men's health forum.
Friday, October 15th at 7 p.m. with Dr. Nelson from Kenosha. And it's going to be done through Zoom, and we have a password and passcode here. But yeah, it's focusing on men's health.
Okay, this is a men's health forum by Dr. Galen Nelson. Dr. Galen Nelson out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. He is the keynote speaker, but they're going to be doing a forum on men's health, and it sounds like he's got a lot of good things to say, good material to cover. Anytime you talk about your health, we need to be aware of that. Why is that? Because it says in 3 John, I would that you would prosper and be in health, even as your what? As your soul prosper. So if my soul is prospering, then I should be prospering in health as well. And it's very important to have good health today, and to keep yourself fit, keep yourself healthy, and keep your immune system up, that you're able to fight against some of the diseases and things that's out there. It also, I think it'd be very important for brethren to tune in and everything, especially since our grocery shelves are starting to be barren. They're starting to clear up. I spoke with someone today about the supply chain and what's going on in at least in the places that I tend to trade, and trying to get some information from them. And this person said that don't look for any relief through this winter. It's not going to get any better as we approach the end of this year and the beginning of the next year, because we won't come out of winter until what, March, April, we come out of winter. And so individuals said, don't look for no relief. I mean, they're doing the best they can, but you're going to have more demand than supply. And so it's just a simple equation. When you've got more demand than supply, then there's not enough to go around. They don't want to push the panic button. But I said this a long time ago, over a year ago, I said, just whenever you go to the store, just pick up an extra item or two, something that you can kind of, pack up, and because none of us have $1,000. I'm gonna go stock up. I got $1,000. We don't have that luxury. So just whatever you have, if you can pick up one or two extra items, and just kind of think about, we shouldn't be gluttony. Let's curb our appetites. It shouldn't be gluttony. That's for me too. You got to give up thirds. Got to go down to seconds. You might have to give up seconds and just be content with one plate. We might have to do that. So I think that is a good forum, and then knowing what we can eat nutritionally, and to help build up our immune system. And then, and I know one thing he's going to say, I hope we had to get away from stress. You have to get away from stress, and you have to get away from fear, being afraid of everything. But we should be able to do that, right? Because he did not give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of love, spirit of power, and what? Sound mind. That's what I have. So, I mean, I can't be stressing, and sometimes you got to turn that news off and not listen to that news all the time. You turn that off, because all they want to do is stress you out. It's just stress. They want you to be afraid. And when you're afraid and you have a lot of stress, that lowers your immune system, and it makes you susceptible to colds and flus and pandemic and everything else. So we got to know how to build ourselves up, and so I think that'll be good. That'll be good for the brethren. Anything else? We'll be back here on the Shabbat for our Shabbat service, and I'm gonna tell you, come on over to Yah side. It's gonna be all right. Come on over to Yah side. I didn't know you was a singer. I didn't either. but we're gonna have a good time, and lift up His name, praise Him, and be thankful. But we're gonna talk more. We got our foundational scriptures, and we're gonna be leading up to. There is a feast coming up called Feast of Dedication, which is toward the end of our calendar. The Feast of Dedication is coming up. Somebody might say, well, what are you doing for a Feast of Dedication? I don't know, we might just come together and just have a good feast, and have that fellowship. But Shabbat will be here for the Sabbath service. So if there's no questions or any comments or anything, I'm gonna say, oh, okay. I'm gonna say shalom. Praise the Most High. Thank you for tuning in to this class, and we'll see you on the Shabbat. We salute all the kings and the queens, all of our brothers and sisters, those who believe on Him and that's been born again of water and spirit, that we can become the sons of Elohim. Shalom.